Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley here for Pinkfresh Studio. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing two card projects which feature easy watercolor backgrounds, and I'm using the brand new Pinkfresh Studio Liquid Watercolors. These are so much fun. I think you're gonna love them. I'm using a couple of the color families today, including the jewel tones. This includes 12 liquid watercolors. They come in this really beautiful sturdy box, which is perfect for storing. These are the darker, richer colors, but I also have the pastels on hand, which I will be using in today's video as well. The pastel colors include all of those soft, really beautiful Pinkfresh colors that we love. Each of these liquid watercolors comes with a dropper top. It's similar to a re-inker in the style of the bottle, but the liquid watercolor inside of this is different. Now, in addition to the liquid watercolors, I'll also be using the Pinkfresh Studio Premium watercolor paper. This is a 9x12 cold press watercolor paper. It is made in Germany. It's a beautiful cardstock, and I've trimmed a piece down here to start my first really easy watercolor background. Now, these backgrounds are designed to be for beginners. I am no expert in watercolor, but I love creating really beautiful, loose watercolored backgrounds, and that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm starting by taping down my Pinkfresh Studio watercolor cardstock onto a cutting board. I have a couple of colors of the liquid watercolors here. They've been sitting for a while, so I'm going to make sure that I really shake them up. And I'm going to drop a little bit of this liquid watercolor from each of these colors onto a paint palette. Now, if you don't have a paint palette, that's okay. You can use any slick surface you may have on hand, including a plastic plate, an old glass plate, whatever you want. I'm just using this palette today. Now, the three colors I'm using for this background are Sage, Lush Forest, and Evergreen. And you can see I'm adding quite a bit of water onto my watercolor cardstock. I'm going to create kind of an ombre, really loose ombre watercolored background. So I'm starting with my lightest color, Sage, at the top, and then I'm moving into Lush Forest. Now, if I add more water to the liquid watercolors, the colors become a little more transparent, a little bit lighter and softer. But if I go in full strength with the watercolors, as I'm doing with a couple of these here, then you can see that they are really intense. So you can control the intensity of the color that you're using by the amount of water that you add. So keep in mind, you do have a little bit of water in your brush. So when you're using a larger brush, you're going to have more water in the brush and the color may come out a little bit more on the pale side. Again, you control the intensity of the color by the amount of water that you add. So once I have my colors down, you can see I'm kind of tilting my board, allowing that color to move around. And then I come back in with a little more color in a couple more spots, tilt it around again. And then I am going to set this aside to dry. Now you can let it totally air dry, or you can hit it with a heat tool, which we will do in just a bit. But I want to get started on my second watercolor background. And this is more of an ombre stripe. I like to do this on a dry piece of watercolor cardstock with a drier brush. And I'm starting at the top with Ballet Slipper. Now this is one of the pastels and it is super light, but you can see I can build this up by using less water. And as it dries, it does get a little more intense. Now I'm moving into Coral Reef, which is one of my all-time favorite Pinkfresh Studio colors. And finally, I have Raspberry Bliss here at the bottom, but you can see I'm moving some of that color into the center well and picking up more water to kind of make it a little bit lighter so that I'm not coming in with a super intense version of this color up against those really nice, softer versions of color at the top. Then at the bottom, I'm using a more concentrated of that Raspberry Bliss, and that gives me 4 watercolor stripes right down the front of my cardstock. Now you'll notice on the striped paper, the color doesn't move a whole lot like it does on the first, and that's because we started with a dry piece of watercolor cardstock. So that color will tend to absorb right away and stay in place. Whereas when we put the watercolor on a wet cardstock with water on top of it, that color moved around a lot more. I'm going to hit these with a heat tool to quickly dry them, and then we're going to make a couple of very quick and simple cards. I had some foiled sentiments. These are from the Lush Elegance press plate set. I foiled them using some champagne foil and die cut them with the coordinating die. They were sitting on my desk. I had them from a project that I created for release day. You can watch that video over on my YouTube channel. Now I'm grabbing the Lush Elegance stamp set, and I am going to stamp these beautiful florally viney images onto some vellum. I'm actually going to white heat emboss them. So I'm placing the vellum in the center of my Misty stamping tool, and I'm prepping that with a powder tool. Then I'm going to ink up my stamp with some Versamark ink and stamp that into the center of my vellum. I'm using my Pinkfresh Studio stamp press to make sure I get even pressure over the entire surface of that stamp. And then once I know that everything's been inked properly, I'm going to remove this from my Misty stamping tool, add some super fine detail white embossing powder. And once I've covered all of those images with embossing powder, I'm going to heat set and melt all of that embossing powder so I have these nice, smooth, bright white images on top of that vellum. I really love simple images on top of watercolor backgrounds. I think it just makes for the most stunning effect. I've die cut these images using the coordinating die set from Lush Elegance, and now I'm using the double stitch rectangles over this background. This is like the second largest one, and I'm going to hold it in place with some tape while I run it through my die cut machine so that I get it in the exact spot that I want. You can see that I'm left with this beautiful watercolor panel with that double stitch detail around the border. Now, sometimes these watercolor panels can be a little bit warpy, and I find that a panel of foam adhesive on the back, these solid panels of foam adhesive that I make myself, really help to smooth out any of the warping. So I went ahead and placed that on the back side of my panel. And now I'm adding all of my vellum pieces using some liquid glue. I'm using the Pinkfresh Studio Liquid Glue, and I'm just kind of hiding it behind areas where there's a bit of embossing powder. And then I'm using my tweezers to help me put these into place. And I'm using an acrylic block over the top of these while that liquid glue dries to hold them in place on this more textured watercolor cardstock. For the sentiment, I added some foam adhesive to the back. I removed the backers, and then I placed that kind of in that lower right-hand corner. Now I'm removing the backer from the back side of my foam adhesive panel, and I'm placing this onto an A2 size white card base. Now, at the end of this video, I will put a little bit of the clear drops, the ice drops from Pinkfresh Studio on this card, but let's work on card number 2. I'm using that same double-stitched rectangle to die cut my panel. That helps kind of flatten it out along with, gives it that beautiful border. And then I'm grabbing the Wildflower Elegance die. This does have a coordinating stencil set, but I wanted to keep this nice and clean, just some bright white die cuts on this watercolor backdrop. I'm die cutting it twice from some white cardstock, and then I'm using some liquid glue to stack up those layers. Now my sleeves are going to be different here because in between the creation of the first part of this and now, I actually went live on Pinkfresh Studio's YouTube channel, and I created another watercolor background. So you can check that out from Tuesday, November 18th's live stream. So I'm stacking these up, and once I have them stacked up, again, I'm going to use that foam panel trick to help kind of smooth out some of the warping that's on this watercolor panel. The more water that you put onto the cardstock itself, the more warping you may have. This one has less warping because we didn't put a lot of water onto the panel to begin with. We just used the watercolors on top of it. But still, I find that that panel of foam adhesive with that nice strong adhesive on the back kind of smooths it all out. I'm adding this Wildflower Elegance die cut to the front of my panel using some foam adhesive. And then again, I'm taking that foiled sentiment that is from the Lush Elegance press plate set, and I'm placing that onto the card front using some foam adhesive. I'll add this card front onto a white A2 size card base. Again, just keeping these cards really simple and allowing the watercolor to take center stage on both of these card projects. But I did want to add a little something. And so I grabbed the clear drops from Pinkfresh Studio. These are called the ice drops. They're like clear droplets. And I'm adding them onto the card front using some liquid glue and the dual tip embellishment tool. So there you have it, two very simple cards featuring some very basic and simple watercolor techniques that you can experiment with using your brand new Pinkfresh Studio Liquid Watercolors. These are so great. You can check out all three sets of the liquid watercolors, which include the jewel tones, the pastels, as well as the classics over on the Pinkfresh Studio website. They are only available there, and they are only available while supplies last, so make sure you get your hands on these because they are so much fun. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in these products in the description at YouTube, so if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there. As always, I want to say thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you enjoyed these projects. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of the card making, paper crafting, and live stream video tutorials shared here. I would love for you to leave me a comment below and let me know which of these two card projects is your favorite. I can't wait to hear what you think. I don't know. I think it might be this one that we're looking at now. Once again, I want to say thanks so much for stopping by. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.